Hello, welcome back to our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. So continuing off from yesterday's stream of trying to get the research working. I got to the point where the research was visible. I must have left in an error state. So test widget. Again. So I thought I fixed this yesterday. Well, I did fix it, but maybe it's not saving it correctly. Might have to make them variables in the class in the blueprint so that they don't keep losing it, because they seem to lose what these variables are. I'll set them again one final time. Make sure that it is saved and compiled. Hopefully they won't get lost again, but if they do, I'll just have to make them variables. Okay, so where were we? Wrong level. So yeah, we have the research available, but we don't have any ability to increase or decrease the people, because the way the building construction works was that it was tied to adding construction workers, because we are using the basic task widget. So the basic task widget says go and do something specific, and obviously in this case we want to be able to do a little bit more generic. So we actually add the construction and the research things separately. We add the widget here. So what we're going to do is add some event dispatchers, which I did manage to create yesterday, and have them propagate the event back down to the parent widget, which can then do what needs to be done, which is all that. So we'll take all this. This is actually the construction, so we'll put this one in the construction. Don't need, oh yeah, we need two of those so that we can go down the right route. Okay, it's probably not really where it's going to be actually, because it's going to have to propagate it to further down the line. We'll leave it there for now. So at the moment the events are handled directly, the button events are handled directly in the widget. But we need to call our assign and unassigned population events. The input for those two events is just going to be the name. If I can tie that up. No. And that would be the name of the building or the name of the research. Basically just going to do that instead. And then let's try that one again. And then in the test sector widget, we can take that widget and bind to those two events, the assign and the unassigned. Now all we can do at this point is create an event which should call a function. That's a little bit inconvenient because that means we have to have another two functions for all of, well, two functions for assign and unassign, and then two functions for the research. So an alternative approach is if we add the output here. So we know that in this case we're going to create many basic task widgets. So that's what we'll do. We'll have a base task and keep it specific, and that will be a basic task reference array. So we'll have to have that as a local variable, so we can add to it. As we make them. So once we've displayed them, we'll add them to our array, and once we're done, we'll pass them out. And we'll do the same in our research. So we'll have the local variable for task widgets. No, I thought that I made the task widget with variable. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I did make the task widget variable, but I didn't actually set it correctly. Array. So doing that means we can take these construction widgets or tasks for construction and tasks for research out of this function and handle them instead in the event graph. So what we'll do is to clean this up. Don't want to pre-construct. Use a sequence just so we've got some order. So we want to do the research first, then we want to do the resources, and then construction. For the research and the construction, we're going to tie up the events here. The resource works differently, uses a different widget, so we don't really need to do it in this way. If we made a widget, specialization widget for both construction and research, then we wouldn't need to do it in this way either. But this maps better to how the other prototype was working, because the other prototype used the same widgets for different scenarios as well, which I think is slightly nicer. So for each of the widgets, we want to bind to both events. So it's pretty much the same down here too. But now, instead of being able to only create an event which would call a function, we can just add a custom event. Do need to space this out a bit more. I'll name those in a moment. Doing it this way just means that everything can be kept together, rather than having to have 4 functions to handle these different things. This is what we used to do for construction, so we can take this out of here now. This is what we do for building, for the basic task, so we can take that out. So that's going to be pretty much the same for both construction, but that's actually our get castle. Get player castle macro that we can use instead. That takes all. Oh no, sorry, we're doing it to the controller, aren't we? But we also need to make sure the castle is valid, don't we? So, do we macrofy, create a macro for all of that stuff? Let's do it in here. Get valid. So it's a bit of a lengthy name, but because what we want out of it is slightly different. So the input from this context doesn't have to be anything at all. Output, we want the player controller is valid and it is not valid pins. We just want that one as player controller. So basically this will get the player controller, get the player pawn, check that that's valid, which would be the castle, check there's a valid castle, and then return us a player controller if that's true. Although obviously it technically returns player controller in both cases. We know that if the player doesn't own it, then we don't care. So it's actually this function we need instead. That's research, so down here we need to do the builders. Obviously the name actually comes from over there. I guess what we could do is have some kind of local variable to determine plus and minus called the same function, but for the time being that's what we've got. Assign builders, so we don't have any assign researchers in our player controller just yet. Assign builders, assign miners. Assign researchers. So one thing that is evident by this is we're not actually checking that the player is trying to assign builders or miners or researchers to the actual sector they are looking at. If it weren't for the player control pawn. So that shouldn't make too much of a difference because they shouldn't go out of sync, but okay, so in this case we need the research controller, but we still use the assign population function. We need the name and the population. In this case we're just going to change that to researchers. That's that one. So again, much like we did in the previous case, the positive should be +1, the unassign is -1. So we change this now, so on assign researchers and on unassign researchers. So that should get the right amount of people down to the right place, and that actually should mean that the research job begins and eventually completes. We need to make sure that that is reflected on our tasks. So yeah, so the event tick for our basic task is actually going to get the construction component stuff. So this is where that becomes a problem. Where having the construction jobs and research jobs separate is problematic, because there's no real difference between any of those two things, plus in manufacturing jobs where we are building catapults or cannons or whatever, they are effectively the same thing, just different things need to know about them occurring, but otherwise their process is the same. There may be some difference in how time affects them, whether the people, the quantity of people working on a particular research job may not affect the same in the way that it does for construction jobs. So there's that to consider. But I think it might be better to tie them all up the same way. Because I either need a separate widget to go and get the information from the research controller or the research component at the castle level, or I need a separate, or I need to just merge things together and just have jobs as jobs. I'm kind of more preference on that side of things, but obviously there's always the risk of I'll get stuck where I have to untangle it all because they are different and I just haven't figured out how. But even if that's the case, the only thing that have to do would be to somehow differentiate them, and I could do that with some kind of type. Like, I think manufactured jobs, for example, would have a number of runs in its job. So something would occur every time it's done. I'm going to do that for now, because that's going to be the easiest way of doing it. So to achieve that, we are currently adding the jobs to the research component. If we just add them instead to the construction component, and then where we have player controller, see, now in theory we don't even need this whole separate event part. We'll leave it for now. So now the jobs go into the construction component, and the population is assigned to the construction component, and our basic task widget is using the construction component to match up the jobs and display the current and remaining progress. So that should mean that, oops, we should be able to start a research job. Nope. Let's try the rock one. Nope. Can we actually start a building job? Yeah, so that still works. Building probably won't appear because it's the wrong tech age for it. Let's see how far we get with our research jobs then. Okay, so we do get into the research job, assign researchers. We do have a name. We are assigning a positive population to our job. We're allowed to do it. Let's see if we can find the existing job. So our job only contains wood. I don't even know why a job would contain wood. That's a resource. Okay, so in the castle we should be adding those available technologies. One thing that's not going to work very well is we don't clean up when we make certain things available or not available, because we're adding them all to the construction component. We don't remove them from there when a particular blueprint becomes available or not. So we kind of only want to do that once. Let's see if this works. Unlocked. That's not going to work because they're not. They kind of all want to be unlocked. Yeah, so we need to make sure we add them. We call this begin job to get the technology recognized in the construction component. Mainly for setting the time. That's the kind of key thing. if we don't set the time, we'd need to know what type it is so we could find the time based on what it is, be it a research or building. Because we can't get told the time when we assign or unassign population. We have to have that kind of start point. Being as our research doesn't change at the moment, we'll just stick with where it was, because it's all available. But what we will do is print out what becomes available. So, Mine Factory Lab and all the research is available. So the construction component does appear to know about everything. Just add a few more bits of information. Yeah, so the construction component knows about that. Let's find assign population. So just here. Just call it task. Job. So at least now we'll get an error when that doesn't work. Yeah, so it says it's unknown. The construction component says that it adds all of those things. Oh, and then it says it adds wood. That's why I need to find out where's that wood being added, and unless that's not the construction component really, unless that is the research component, or not the research, the resource. Yeah, that's why I copied the wrong thing. Although it still says it's not known. Well, it works now. Okay, so it's not known. We must be looking at the wrong thing still. Don't really know where though. Seeing if there's anything in here that tells me more about the blueprint we're on. No, none of those seem to give me any kind of indication of why we're not working. They seem to set that on the first go. But not on the second. Maybe that's because the job completes. That would take it away if the job didn't have any time. Some of the technology doesn't have any time, don't think, because I haven't set it. But the rock does, so if that's true then the rock should work. Yes, so the rock does work. So I just need some times on all the rest of them. I think I'll just put something in there so that I don't spend ages debugging why they don't work again. Actually, this comes from a spreadsheet. It would be quicker to do it on the spreadsheet. we go. So now they have all 100 values. And now they all should work. So when they do finish, we need to do something with them. So I guess if everything is going through the construction component, we don't know that it's a research job or a building job at this point, or what would potentially later be a manufacturing job. So we are going to need some idea of what type of thing it is. I think we had something similar, an enumeration that I created before for that kind of thing. Don't know if I kept it because I wasn't really using it at the time. But so as far as I can tell, there is the construction jobs, research, which is design, construction, and manufacturing. Design, construction and manufacture. Trying to get them all the same tense. And we also had our job structure. We're just going to call this our task. So we also want a variable for runs. That would only apply to manufacturing. So call it our task manager. So our tasks are actually going to be our task. Obviously a whole bunch of stuff's not going to work now. So find task. I think it might be nicer if we used that one before. And player controller, assign population. Yeah. Yeah, we'll leave it as is. So I was thinking maybe this begin job would be better as a function. Maybe we'll have that register task. So we'll just basically just replace everything with task. We know the name's going to come in and the type is going to come in, and we'll also have the initial time and the runs. The runs default will be 1. Yeah, that's fine. Just call that time instead. We will have an output. The output will be the task, just in case something else needs it. But what we did want to do is make sure that this is only run on the server, so yes, I'm not really certain why it's not going to make any difference whether I do it in a function like that or this when I do want it to run on the server, so that's not going to work. Need to make sure it's run on the server, so to do that it needs to be begin job. Actually, undo. Can do instead actually. There we go. So what we achieve there is we make the function protected so that it can't be called from external callers, and we have the event to propagate it. That just keeps that implementation away in a function as cleanly as it can get. So assign population. To recreate the get. No, Okay, so we just need to tie them up in the right way. So that just needs to do that, I think. Just update the population. Find task. Just need its name. Oops. That one. So it should have too many more things to go. That one we're going to have to leave a minute so we can make sure that we connect everything up in the same way. So that needs to go over to the completed jobs. The assigned population goes to those two nodes. The initial time to the top of that one. Elapsed time, top, bottom, top. Top of that, bottom of that. Current time, bottom of that one, that one, so it's just a name here. Yep, so that's just removing the completed jobs and calling the appropriate function. So we also need the type. That's going to need to know the task type. Whoever handles it needs to know what it was. Assign population. That should now be a task. It's just assigned population in this case to of that. Doesn't seem to be updating that one correctly, so just re-tie it up. Task completed. Okay, so that's all of the changes that need to be done to make our task manager in charge, at least in terms of all the switching of the data types and names. So the castle so this is where we begin all those jobs, and we probably need a function in here to remove them as well. Particularly for the research ones and the production ones, they would need to be removed. We didn't want to create a new graph. So in this case, we don't need the time or the runs. We'll keep the task type just in case. From here we want to find item. No, it's not going to work. We need to iterate over all of our tasks. From them, get the name. If the name equals the name we're given, we need the break in there, so we don't need to carry on once we've finished finding it. If we found it, then we've completed. And once we've found it, we need to remove it by this index. can do. It'll be fine. We'll just check the type as well, just in case. Okay, and that will then call that. So when we come to it, we can unregister them successfully. So we want to register them on our new task manager. So we can't call begin job because there isn't one. We can't call register job, register task, or shouldn't be able to call register task the function. Let's see what happens when we try. Not unregister task. So this is a register task the function. So we shouldn't, in theory, be able to call this. Doesn't seem to be stopping me. Even gets called. Okay, I'll ignore the fact that it actually lets me do something that I'd have thought it wouldn't, but maybe their blueprints don't support public and private all that well. So now all of our construction jobs are handled by our task manager. Refresh available technologies. We need to go to our task manager too. Now in theory, if we know we're running under the authority under the castle on the server blueprint, then we could just call the function, and that probably would save a little overhead, but given I don't know if overhead's really going to be a problem here, we won't bother. Just try and keep it consistent. So the time is that one, and the name is that one. And in this case it's the design. So register all the tasks on the task manager. We need to make sure our default task manager register task default value of run should be 1. Let's make sure it's 1 everywhere. Register remote task should be 1. Unregister remote task doesn't matter. Register task should be 1. Okay. Yep. So we also want to make our widget work. I think at the moment we won't see anything. Shouldn't really seen anything there, I don't think. Because nothing is added. Yeah, actually the what's available on the UI isn't really a reflection of what tasks have been added to the task. So this is just rendering the research tasks and the construction tasks, and it's our task widget that we needed to change. So the task widget is using a construction component, so we need to change him to use the task manager. Just define task. Break the task. Assigned population goes into that box, and current time goes into these two. Should be the UI side of them done there. Now the player controller is assigning population to the construction task for builders, so we can take that away. Nope, we want the task manager. And assign population. For that task, that population. So we could kind of remove the uniqueness of researchers and construction workers now, because they all flow through the same process. But okay, the fact that they show 3 zeros and 2 zeros does imply that it's not working. Yeah, so it's the adding of those tasks isn't working. Isn't working based on the name. So that should be in here. Okay, we are getting it here. Yep, so the value's going up, we're just not seeing it. So that would imply this isn't working correctly. Oh, basic task. I guess what we need to do is say fail to find task. So there's a lot of output saying it failed to find tasks. Even though it says it added the tasks. Ah, but it's the client saying that it failed to find tasks. Yes, okay. Missed a very important step to replicate the component. Now all of our values are working correctly. Research all the research. Yeah, so one thing that's important is that we can't remove the research, or we don't remove the research at the moment. But within the real game, you can only research one thing once anyway. So when a new research is started, the old one can be removed. I guess that's another kind of reasoning why sharing this task manager makes some sense, because at any given time you can have probably at most 4 things going on in terms of tasks as we've defined them. You could be constructing the 3 buildings and doing some research. Once you've constructed the factory, you can then do some manufacturing, which obviously would effectively be another 4th task. So at any given time you can't do more than 4. But it would be good to make the construction jobs only appear when they should, and things like that. So, but that's all I have time for today. A bit shorter than again I would have liked, but I should be back tomorrow, probably about the same time today as I did today, so from about 2:30ish kind of time. I should have some more time tomorrow to make some more progress. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye for now.